Good evening, barflies and lounge lizards, and tonight we'll be discussing my favorite 1960s giant monsters. Or creatures, I haven't decided yet, but you'll know once you see the video title. And number 5 on the list is the Tyrannosaurus from Dinosaurus from 1960. And Dinosaurus tells the story of an American engineering team working in the Caribbean. They accidentally uncover 2 dinosaurs, a Brontosaurus and a Tyrannosaurus, who have been frozen for millions of years. And wouldn't you know, the 2 are struck by lightning and revived alongside a friendly caveman. And as one might expect, the T-Rex is aggressive and the Brontosaurus friendly, and hijinks ensue as the Tyrannosaurus begins rampaging across the island and a young boy befriends the caveman. Though both dinos are quite spiffy, we're just going to focus on the T-Rex for this entry, and what a T-Rex he is. Quite charming and fun, a nice use of both puppets for close-ups and stop motion. And the models for said stop motion were done by sculptor and model maker Marcel Delgado. Delgado is best known for his work on the 1933 version of King Kong along with Willis O'Brien. Kind of an unsung hero of stop motion, it's said that his methods revolutionized the craft. He introduced the skeleton method of model making. Rather than using clay, a metal skeleton was filled with foam rubber or cloth and then covered with latex foreskin. For Dinosaurus, Delgado was told he would have 5 to 6 weeks for the models, but 2 weeks later they came a-calling, only giving him a few days to finish. As to the stop motion itself, 5 different animators are credited for the film, one of which was actor Tom Holland of Spider-Man fame, who at some point will apparently end up traveling back in time to do some stop motion work and a bunch of voice acting. Though it's fairly possible this is a different Tom Holland. Well, what are the chances of that? Another artist of note was David Powell, who not only worked on The Time Machine, but was the son of the Time Machine director, George Powell. Now, our T-Rex would go on to do some TV as well. A shot from the film was used in an episode of Gilligan's Island. And though I said this wouldn't be about the Brontosaurus, I did want to mention that our friendly Bronto, as well as the miniature jungle set, was used for the Twilight Zone episode, The Odyssey of Flight 33. And on a similar note, the T-Rex's growl was used several times for several different monsters on The Outer Limits. And number 4 on the list is the giant reptile from Reptilicus from 1961. And Reptilicus tells the story of a Danish miner who finds while mining a piece of giant reptile frozen in the ice. Said piece is then flown to Copenhagen where it is accidentally thawed out. And much to the surprise of everyone, that piece regenerates into a full Reptilicus. It then goes on a rampage through the Danish countryside, as any good giant reptile would. And this is a really fun monster design, quite charming, kind of like the giant claw, a fellow puppet monster, though Reptilicus is a good bit more threatening than the monster bird. He actually looks like something right out of Showa era Godzilla, even with his distinctly European dragon-like look. Now this is an interesting case. Reptilicus was a Danish-American production with 2 different versions, each by a different director, shot simultaneously with almost entirely the same cast. But there are quite a few differences between the 2 films. In the Danish version, Reptilicus is seen flying. The American director, Sidney Pink, felt that this just didn't look good and cut it from the American version. Instead, he added some acid venom spewing action. And another difference is that in the American version, Reptilicus swallows a farmer, a photo of I.B. Melchior's son, in an often criticized shot. This does not happen at all in the Danish version. In that one, he crushes the farmer's house instead in a much more effective shot. But whichever version you prefer, the Danish version is the one to watch for creature action, featuring more effect shots and more refined special effects. As to the person behind creating the puppet, that would be an Orla Hoyer, no I mispronounced that one, and this is their only film credit that I could find. 2 Reptilicus puppets were built, a larger and a smaller one. Apparently the larger one is the better of the 2, and it appears more prominently in the Danish cut, along with some larger miniatures built to go along with it. And number 3 on the list is the Gappas from Gappa, the Triphibian monster from 1967. And Gappa the Triphibian monster tells the story of a greedy magazine owner who wants to collect exotic animals for a fancy pants island resort. So an expedition of his employees as well as some scientists head to the mysterious Obelisk Island. And though the expedition is treated well by the natives, they still go and enter a forbidden area where they find a baby bird lizard, the Gappa. As to be expected from silly humans, they take the creature back to Japan to put it in a zoo. Once again warned by the natives, and once again ignoring the natives, the actions of the expedition awaken the baby Gappa's near indestructible parents who are less than pleased with the situation. They make their way to Japan and do what any good kaiju should. The Gappa are a great design and one of the most charming looking of 1960s giant monsters. Kinda like Godzilla had a baby with Rodan, and voila, Gappa Gappa hey. And they can fly, which is pretty neat. The suits were designed by Akira Watanabe, who also developed the story for the film. Watanabe was a former Toho employee and worked on The Green Slime, Frankenstein vs. Baragon, King Kong vs. Godzilla, and Destroy All Monsters. As to the suit actors, there were 2 performers for each of the Gappas. I was able to find most of the names, but darn if I could not find any information on any of them. But hey, if any viewers know, let me know. There was no sequel to the film, but the Gappas would go on to make some other appearances. Stock footage of the adults would appear on the British sci-fi series Red Dwarf, which, coinkadinkalik, I am currently watching and just saw that episode yesterday. And the head of the female Gappa can be seen in the 1972 Pinku comedy Amorous Family, like a fox and a raccoon. And finally, the baby Gappa would grow up wise and charming and can be seen hanging out at the comment section every weekend. And on that, we should take a break.
Somewhere back at the dawn of history, man discovered roast duck. Man's next discovery, the stubby stomach. Centuries will pass before he discovers something to unstub it. When he does, he will call it Alka-Seltzer. Its bubbly alkalizers will neutralize his stubby stomach. Too late for him, but not too late for us.
Ideal launches the Boaterific Sharkback, racing boats that change course by themselves because they're equipped with computer pilot systems. Plug in a pilot disc and your shark will steer the course you want automatically. You get 4 different pilot discs for 4 different maneuvers. Cruise them. Race them. They're a wild breed. The Boaterific Sharkback. They're ideal.
And we're back with number 2 on the list, and that's Gamra from Gamra the Giant Monster from 1965. And Gamra the Giant Monster tells the story of a giant flying turtle creature, possibly from Atlantis, who is freed from the Arctic ice by a nuclear blast. People have really got to start avoiding Arctic ice altogether in these movies. But Gamra makes his way to Japan and tries to make friends with the locals. And by making friends with the locals, I mean he goes on a rampage across Japan. Eventually, our anti-hero in a half shell is lured into a rocket and shot to Mars. You see, in this first film, Gamra was not yet the hero he would later become. He wasn't sweet, but he was still full of turtle meat. I'm sure most of you fine patrons here know that Gamra would go on to become a huge success, eventually becoming one of the better known kaiju around the world. But we're just here to talk about the first film. There are several different stories floating about as to the origin of the character, 2 of which involve Dai Films president Sachi Nagata on a flight back from the US. In one version, he imagined a tortoise flying alongside the plane, but it's also said that he simply saw an island, sometimes a cloud, shaped like a turtle. He got back to Japan and told his people to get to work. There's also claimed that the whole idea was stolen from a proposed half-hour TV series that was pitched to Dai, but I've seen no actual proof of said claim. Now, with the creation and design of Gamra, things get messy. There is a laundry list of people credited for the creation and design of Gamra, with a whole bunch of conflicting info as well, so I'm just going to avoid it. But I did want to mention Yone Saburo Tsukiji, the special effects director of the film, who also did some concept art. And then the Yagi brothers, who worked on the original Godzilla suit, were involved in some form. As to who actually played Gamra, apparently there were a whole bunch of people from the effects team who had to step up and put on the suit. But apparently Kazuo Yagi did the most of it, and the suit itself was reportedly 6.5 feet tall and 110 pounds. Gamra's name was originally Kamera Kame being the Japanese word for turtle, but the K was changed to a G, quite possibly because it sounded too similar to the loan word camera, or camera. And before we get to number 1, I wanted to do an honorable mention. And that's pretty much all the Showa Godzilla stuff from the 60s. All the Toho stuff from the 60s. But there is no way I can get away with using Toho footage anymore. So just have to use our imaginations. And number 1 on the list is Ogra from Gorgo from 1961. And Gorgo tells the story of a crew of treasure hunters who discover a monster on an island off the coast of Ireland. And much like Gappa from way back at Entry 3, the silly humans capture the beast and sell it to a circus in London. And also much like Gappa, young Gorgo was not alone. His very angry mother, Ogra, shows up in London looking for her baby. Talk about one of the coolest monster emergencies in cinema history. The scene where Ogra comes up out of the water, phenomenal. Ogra is basically the British Godzilla. This film was even originally to be set in Japan as an homage to Godzilla. And though her design is similar-ish, it's unique enough to really stand on its own and offer something new and different. The film was of course shot using pseudomation and miniatures, but what's really neat about it is since Gorgo was so much smaller than Ogra, smaller miniatures were built in order to convey the scale of the monsters, and this one is truly a high watermark for 1960s sci-fi monster movies. Now, sort of like Gamra, behind the scenes info was not forthcoming. I couldn't find who designed the suit nor a definitive answer on who was inside said suit. But most sources cite Mick Dillon, who played not only a Dalek in Doctor Who, but also a Trifid in Day of the Triffids. But it's possible that Mick played only Gorgo, and stuntman Dave Wilding played Ogra. No real clue though, but as I often say, you get what you pay for. Then again, you're watching this channel, so you are clearly paying dearly. Ogra and her lad Gorgo would go on to have additional adventures in several different comic book series. From 1961 to 1965, Charlton Comics released 23 issues of a Gorgo comic, which featured the work of Steve Ditko, Spider-Man creator. There was also a follow-up series, Return of Gorgo, as well. And in the series, Ogra, along with the lad, would defend man against various human, monster, and alien threats. And we're going to end things on a supposedly. But supposedly, Gene Simmons, the demon himself, based his dragon boots on Gorgo. If this is true, I'd say it's probably more likely the design was based off of Ogra, not young Gorgo. And that's all the time we have this week. Please like, comment, subscribe, and keep it wacky.